Hello guys, hello YouTube, and thanks for tuning in for yet another episode on the channel. And we have a special guest today, Brayden Pierce, CEO of Soundromeda, join us today for Crypto Talk. So, hello Brayden, how are you feeling?
Hey guys. Hey, Evan, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I'm doing great. So again, we're happy to, greet you here on the channel. We're going to talk about, some crypto stuff, some stuff
I'm very
about
excited.
tokenized asset, to enlighten the audience, in a general sense. So first of all, I'm really excited to ask you, how did you get into crypto?
That is such a golden question because it really has shaped the last decade of my life. And for me, I got involved with, cryptocurrency as a whole, in general, starting in 2017, when all of a sudden, and it was like the fall, September 2017, on the news, you start hearing about, what is this Bitcoin going from a couple thousand, now it's at 10, 15,000, whatever it is. It went up very heavily in that time period. And I was like, what is this? I got to figure out what this is. And I was very fortunate enough to come across some interesting philosophy that really just stuck to me. And somebody put it online that I found. Somebody put it that Web 1 was about unlocking information, Google, Wikipedia. Yeah. Web 2 is about unlocking connectivity, social media, bringing people together, sharing content. And Web 3 is about unlocking value and, decentralization of ownership.
Yeah, exactly.
And I thought, wow, that is so powerful. When you think about tokenizing assets, when you think about like the way that tech revolutionizes and disrupts sort of industry by industry, this is sort of money's turn to be disrupted and revolutionized.
Yeah.
And when you realize that every industry evolves around money itself, now we're disrupting the core motivator for all industries. And I thought to myself, this is massive. This is huge. Industries will seemingly collapse overnight, and other industries will seemingly explode overnight. And it's a huge opportunity to really figure out, what. Well, I think in general, I was like, this is going to force society to almost hold like an existential lens on itself to think about what it is we define as valuable, right? And so I think we're in the middle of that period. I think it's just very massive, and there's a lot of you see a lot of sort of like a Game of Thrones for the one that controls the currency. Now what you have like BRICS, sort of like other formations of types of traditional fiat, and Bitcoin really leading the pack still. So I kept on digging. I bought basically, so long story short, I bought the top in 2017, but I never stopped digging, and for years on end, studied technical analysis and just developed my own sort of like trading styles and methodologies that balanced both time and price. And for me, I was like, well, I could stick in this sort of zone of just, investment and trading, or I could contribute in a way that I could see that would, enrich culture, society, and leave a lasting impression on civilization. And where I found was at the most sort of disparaging end of the stick is art and music artists. So I've also been a music guy my whole life, playing music, writing music.
Cool.
Yeah. Even back when I was in high school, my high school choir won a Grammy, and we toured Europe on a cathedral tour to, selling out venues in Los Angeles and, playing major festivals and stuff. And, so I realized, on that end of the stick that there's just a bit of the intrinsic value that music has always had in society for the entire time of human civilization is a bit off kilter, right? And so with this whole new movement of redefining value, I was like, well, we can redefine the intrinsic value for music. And so from 2021 onward, I have been researching and developing a music platform that is designed to do just that, to realign the intrinsic value for music through the music experience by combining gaming into music into a whole new platform. And it has its own cryptocurrency, its own economy, and I'm very excited about sharing it with the public very soon.
Oh, that's amazing. Actually, that you managed to get your hands on start a new project here. Instead of like just being like on a sidewalk and just keep, I don't know, watching crypto grow and go back and stuff. So yeah, it just pretty brave to start something new in a completely new like industry, because it's like only a decade old, right?
Yes, but it's what happens when you get obsessed with something, and
Yeah, I
you
feel
know,
that.
and yeah, and I just got very obsessed with everything involving Web3 and the currency and the whole shebang. And I also saw that in this last cycle how predatory a lot of the sort of creators were with sort of like selling hot air to communities and leaving leaving their community as bag holders and just high and dry. And so I think that what we need to do as builders is to really show people the way, lead the way, light the way, that we can build a new reality with altruism and integrity as part of the codified into the project itself. And if we find a way to, like, as individuals, I mean, we're in a very messed up world right now, right? There's inflation's going crazy. AI is basically making a third to half of all jobs redundant. We're at a very interesting time, and so people are more and more sort of desperate to get more money. And this sort of allure of greed and riches really does kind of just compel people to just make a quick buck, right? But again, if we all sort of like are in it together, saying, hey, let's all contribute to something of value, then that actually can have a sustainable value, over one cycle or two cycles and onward. And that's what I really want to, do with Soundromeda, is to build something of realness.
Yeah, I can put it in that way.
Yes.
Okay, so I believe you have plenty of experience in terms of tokenized assets, tokens. So I was wondering, in your opinion, what is a tokenized asset in context of cryptocurrency, like your vision?
That's such a loaded question, but to put it simply, I mean, it's a financial transaction done in a public ledger that's digitized for everyone to see, right? So, and there's various ways of sort of proofing that system, right? You have proof of work, the sort of traditional form. I mean, we've been actually, people call Bitcoin the original cryptocurrency, but we've been messing with cryptocurrencies for decades. Bitcoin is the one that just simply got it right. It's just like, it's one of those things where it took a lot of iteration and a lot of failures to get it right. And Satoshi Nakamoto got it right. And people were like, that's one of those things, like, and the whole community was very small, but when people saw it, like, oh, wait, this is the one that fixed all the holes of the predecessors. And so, so proof of work, where you have multiple sort of, computers across the world verifying that transaction is true. And then it gives it a thumbs up. But the proof of staking concept, I often find it's really tough to sort of like describe proof of stake, because it's a little bit abstract. Because when you think about it, it's like, it's like you basically entrust nodes to do that operation. It's much more efficient and energy efficient. And then you have DAG architecture like Phantom, and which is even faster. I don't really fully know how to explain direct. I think it's like a directed acrylic graph or something like that. But we're talking about, I think Visa can process thousands of transactions a second, whereas like Phantom can theoretically process hundreds of thousands of transactions a second. So that's in short, cryptocurrency offers us a more efficient way to transact, and you can do that without a middleman sort of approving of that transaction, which in the traditional model takes hours, or, as we all know, 3 business days for important wire transactions when you're sitting there on the line and you're trying to make important business deals and pay other, vendors, and you're like, I need this money to clear. And you're like waiting 3 days, and it's just crazy.
Yeah.
When it's 2024, that really should take seconds. And so, you've had, companies like Ripple I think Ripple has made a great product with XRP, and that's been functioning for basically almost 10 years now.
Yeah.
It's just pretty wild, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, we're getting there. And ultimately, I think that, big wheels turn slowly, and a lot of, most institutions and governments looked at it all as some type of place where hackers would use cryptocurrency for, illegal transactions. But that's a bunch of malarkey.
Yeah.
Because, you're always going to have criminals are always going to crim, right? You're always going to have those, you're always going to have the percentage of individuals that choose to do things against the law. And the irony is that cryptocurrency, because of its sort of like public ledger nature of, proofing transactions, it makes it even, to me, it's actually more difficult for criminals to transact using cryptocurrency, because technically you do have a public ledger that everybody can see things, and that's why they find a way. Still they find a way, yeah. But you have a lot of privacy chains, and they're trying to squash those out. But where do we go from here? What's next?
What's next is like a sort of educational question. So what are some common types of tokenized assets?
So different types of tokenized assets?
Yeah, common types that you can mention.
Like NFTs?
Yeah.
NFTs, you can basically anything can be a tokenized asset. Anything can be anything, and everything can be a tokenized asset. And I think as we enter in, our lives we live a digital life. We are, here in our physical life, but we also have a digital twin, which we very much take, stock and invest in our lives into, right? We're always on the computer. Yeah. And, we care about our digital persona. We transact digitally, we communicate digitally. And so what is really lacking is the sort of, proof system of all this, digital sort of information. As seen just in the last week or so, deep fakes of, Taylor Swift on Twitter, and it's very messed up, as she's the #1 pop star. But it to me, it's like I've been talking about this for a long time, that you need to have a proof system in the form of, similarly to how Vitalik, the founder of Ethereum, talks about, where you have a soul-bound token, which is connected to your, it's almost like a social security number. The US, everybody has your social security number. It's like your individual kind of like serial number. And it's attached to your token. So even yourself can be tokenized as your identity on chain. And so every piece of content you put out is on chain and tokenized, and so that it's coming from a trusted source. So in a lot of ways, a deep fake from Taylor Swift can be relatively easily avoided when where content's coming from. It's coming from a trusted source, a trusted account, verified media, verified news sources, and updates. It's all very solvable if we just allow a system of proofs, and which are all technically tokenized. So everything, including like the art world, there's a lot of fakes that are constantly produced that look just like the real thing. You can have a bill of sale that's tokenized, and buy and sell these tokenized pieces of assets on a marketplace. And do it in a way you can buy and sell things where normally you have to ship art across countries or waters, and it's very expensive to ship that stuff and insure that stuff. But you can do that digitally and own that, quote unquote bill of sale in the form of a tokenized proof instantly. So our lives in the next 5 or 10 years are going to be we're going to really truly be in a very different environment, I believe. Lock in step with AI. A lot of people talk about AI as, AI is like the next thing over Web3, but I look at AI as part of Web3. AI is a piece of Web3, and NFTs are the antidote to the problems that AI cause. With AI, there's a lot of pros with just look at what's happening with ChatGPT, the things we're able to sort of conjure things in seconds in a way that a year or two ago we wouldn't even imagine is possible.
Yeah, it's just been around like a year or so, but it's changed like everything around here.
It's
all
wild.
over the world use it. Yeah,
it's wild. I mean, I wrote my white paper on Soundromeda in June of 2022, and it was at that point it was like one of the hardest things I'd done, because it was like 40 pages, and I was like, I had all these papers around, and if I had just waited like 6 months, I could have done it on ChatGPT in an instant.
Well, you have to do manual check anyways, but yeah.
No, I totally. But I'm saying, like, 6 months later, kids these days, they have it so easy.
Imagine.
But again, there's a lot of pros and cons with that, right? Because there's a lot of value in leaving no stone unturned and learning that information for yourself. So, but that's a whole other kind of conversation and topic. But I think that tokenized assets will continue to be at the forefront of necessity for civilization as a whole. And we'll start to see the real value of NFTs this next cycle and beyond, and really kind of enrich the sort of connotation beyond cartoon monkeys and stuff like that. And I mean, much respect to Bored Ape Yacht Club and everything they built with their whole whole enterprise, and they really did an amazing job with everything. But it did kind of spearhead a gold rush for a lot of copycats and all that. But it also sent a little bit of an unfortunate message that we need to kind of get a quick cash trap. And so that when you look at the general public, 90-something% of people, they would have probably a negative connotation to NFTs. And so everything we're talking about right now as NFTs being a necessary proof system for like validating and authenticating truth, that is when everything will start changing for what tokenization and proofing really means for everything else. And that will really help, shine the value, even voting, voting on chain.
That'll be great, actually. I don't know.
Right?
Well, I know why people don't use it, but still, that's a great concept, to fair voting.
Well, the reason why they don't want to jump into it is a lot of misunderstandings, but B, the incumbents want to keep a binary split because they want to keep things the way it is, so because there's a system in place and they don't really want to untether it.
Yeah.
Because only half of people, at least in the States, I don't know about Georgia, but in the States, only half people vote, And so if you make it easier for people to vote, that would completely change their whole model and strategy around who gets elected.
Yeah, that will be like completely.
You have to make it difficult and challenging and keep it in this sort of like antiquated system, because if you modernize it, then they can't control it. They have to develop a whole new model around it, and they're not prepared for that yet. Which leads us to regulation.
Well, actually, we can talk about as well, because this is the question, one of the questions in my list. So yeah. What are some basic benefits of like incorporating cryptocurrency into the world's economy, especially with regulations coming up?
You will have a third to half of all jobs being redundant by AI, and you have every day you have major corporations culling pieces of their staff away, and it's tragic. And you're just seeing just these numbers, and imagine every one of these numbers are people's lives and their families and everything like that. There's so much emotion tied to it all. And it's just, to me, it's just very tragic, but it's just a small taste of what's to come. And no government seems to have a solution in place that will solve anything of, real, momentum. And so I think that all governments will need to subsidize this massive shift in workforce through specifically tokenized asset. And one of the reasons why regulation is being so tough on it is, I think, number one reason is because they just want to figure out how they get their money. You got to pay the tax man. And crypto's biggest problem is believing its own sort of like idealism that you could basically build a parallel financial system to the one that exists. I mean, if you think about that, I got sucked into it. I'm like, this is great, rebel, blah, blah, blah. I'm a true rebel. And, creative maverick is my, Jungian archetype. But, you have to find a way to make it work with the current financial system, because unless you find a way to completely topple it over, but that just seems so unrealistic. How can you, unless you find a way to take over Goldman and BlackRock and this and that, but that's just not the best way that Web3 and concepts around Web3 can win in DeFi is by working with incumbent players, and there's nothing wrong with that. And yeah, that's how we all win.
We are still early in that epoch of crypto plus Web2 world. So yeah, it's kind of transformative period that's going ahead of us, like I don't know, maybe 10 years or even 20, 30. How can we imagine things with crypto working in the future? So
exactly. I mean, you can try all kinds of different test pilots. And the way I see it, it's like cryptocurrency has allowed for widespread scientific experimentation of economy design and systems of society and DAO type, sort of like how can we restructure organizations and all that. It's almost like, if you think about like, being back in school and like chemistry lab and like you look at your petri dishes, it's like, okay, well that didn't work, that exploded. Thank you, Luna, and you start to sort of, figure out, well, what is something that is stable? And like we talked about, Bitcoin got it right. Bitcoin got it right. And so, again, I think how Web3 wins is by being truly decentralized in the way that it's all inclusive, meaning, incumbents, meaning, those that are underserved in, third world countries and everywhere in between. And Bitcoin does do that. And so, it's like, you will see there's a lot of conversation about Bitcoin this whole cycle, more so than normal. And
see the wave coming out.
And it's pretty wild. But I do think that altcoins will, like the strong projects that have been able to properly build and not overtly scale too fast in a bear market and that work will show in the coming year or 2 or 3. So
but speaking of like global financial system, won't you think that these regulatory challenges will like stop the integration of crypto into like a world we live in?
Well, I mean, so much of there's no simple answer, because a lot of the way that countries are designed, and we can blame a lot on the United States for that, is a system of debt. And so, we have a lot of sort of like quote unquote branding around the value of, countries themselves is around the currency. And, it's like, that's also part of the problem too. You can't just, it's kind of a balancing act, right? I mean, we need to sort of like subsidize joblessness through, adding other forms of revenue, and tokenization is right there for us, but do it in a way that is supportive of, fiat currency and, governments, so that they can properly operate the countries without imploding. But I think that the smart country, I think that there's a lot of countries out there that are hedging bets, including the United States. I mean, if you look at, if you want to follow, you got to follow the money, right? I mean, BlackRock is in full support of Bitcoin, and the United States is a top 10 holder of Bitcoin. So, I mean, the United States is hedging its bets in Bitcoin 100%, and that's pretty powerful. The short answer is that we all just need to find a way to build up our stamina and live, within our means, and don't live on credit, don't live on debt, but live within your means. And I think that ultimately cryptocurrency, and this is something I realized too, that this whole sort of iteration of web forces people to be better with their money, and most people aren't good with their money. If they were, then everybody would be rich, but most people aren't, or maybe not rich, but at least somewhat middle class or upper middle class, and that's putting it very crass and all this and that. But I'm just saying, in general, understanding numbers and understanding the way money works. We spend a lot of time in school, but a lot of time, at least in the US, we spend a lot of time in school, but not a lot of time on real world practical living. If we spent, serious time in school on financing and how to properly budget and do this and that, well, I guarantee you people would be operating differently, in how they use your money. But you're almost either, you either have to seek that information out yourself or be taught that by your parents, but you don't learn that in school. And is that by design? Maybe it is. But in a way, I think, this whole movement, it forces people to be better with numbers, and not everybody's good with numbers.
And your responsibility as well, especially in the crypto world, because not your keys, not your money, as they say, all your activity in crypto world is strictly on your own. Like, you are the only one responsible for your actions.
Yeah, and a lot of people, that that they're not really capable of that.
Yeah, well, that's another topic, like sort of educational, more about teaching your kids how to manage your money and your activity in internet. But yeah, that's whole another story. But I've been really tempted to ask you, sort of another question on the topic, how do you respond to critics who argue that cryptocurrency is just yet another speculative bubble with no intrinsic value and whatsoever?
I think all forms of assets are subject to interpretation, and I get it. I get it. It's scary. It's scary.
Yeah, especially with those companies falling down, FTX. People really get scary and lose their trust and loyalty to crypto.
Yeah, I mean, look, 2-3 years ago, I could give you a different answer, but now I'm like, I get it. I get why you would be scared. The industry as a whole has a lot of lifting up to do on the PR side for it all. But I think ultimately you have to decide what kind of utility that cryptocurrency offers, its own sort of ecosystem, and look at that for intrinsic value. And I think it's a little bit silly to say that, because it's look at stocks and look at the value of real estate, how it's inflated, quadrupled in the last few years, and any kind of tradable asset. To me, when I looked at all the charts for everything, looked at all the charts, you start to realize that just every tradable asset is manipulated in some way. You have somebody pulling the strings, and really just, it's a game of liquidity. And so you could say that everything is sort of this inflated sort of scenario, inflated form of value for what it based off, everything's sort of off kilter from what intrinsic value really means. So it's what we make of it, and it's what we decide. If enough people say that these seashells have value, then they do. And that's up for us to decide. If Bitcoin is worth $40,000, then it is. So I say to them, fuck them. It has intrinsic
Okay.
value if we say it to.
Yeah, I've got your point. Okay, so the next question is like more of a global one as well. So what are
Yeah.
the implications of cryptocurrency on global wealth distribution and inequality?
Well, it's tricky because again, cryptocurrency likes to sell ideals and ideals and a lot of sort of like these optimistic sort of like headlines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But again, most people don't know how to balance budgets and money, and and often succumb to their own psychology of greed, and then you if you gain a lot of money, then you quickly slap it down because you're not used to having a lot of that. So whereas it's a lot easier for those that have wealth to make more wealth. And so how does crypto really solve the gap in wealth? Is that the question?
Yeah, in a matter of way.
I don't know if it does. But I do know that it will help not causing economic collapse,
Not causing.
Yeah, because if you create more sort of forms of currency and people can spend with that, like Grand Theft Auto 6 has been said that they're gonna, whenever it comes out, by the time we die, whenever it comes out, they are said to, whatever money you earn in a game, you can spend in real life. And now all of a sudden you're going to have the hottest video game of all time showcasing showcasing a way of how cryptocurrency can function in a game economy and a game asset in real life. It's going to change for everybody. It's going to be a handshake on, oh yes, this could work. So again, I think it can supplement the disparaging scenario that the downside of AI will cause. But will it help sort of balance out the wealth gap? I don't know if it can. I think that's another kind of systemic sort of problem, which is another kind of conversation. There is hope. There is hope. I'll tell you that much.
Okay.
I'm doing my part for the artists, and that's what I can say.
Cool. So, okay, as we are moving towards the end of our discussion, so I'd like to ask you the following question, like maybe two. So what is the current, like right now, role of cryptocurrency in the world's economy? Like at what point are we at? And next question is, what is the future of crypto, like tokenized asset that you see?
Well, I think it's ultimately the long game, right? I don't think that I see like at least 2 or 3 or 4 crypto cycles continue, and Bitcoin in the millions of dollars before it starts to level out, like kind of gold is now. And I think that I think overall crypto's next movements have to be to find a rightful home through regulation across governments, and a real way for people to sort of interact and transact with it in a way that's much more on the layman UI, UX, and usability. You're seeing some updates like OpenSea making it so that people can, create accounts with just an email address. Those are examples of improving the sort of like system designs that have been completely absent from the previous cycle product developments. So I think that more quality consumer-facing product design, more safety, security, and through regulation, and more hype through another bull run, which people, people are just going to jump right back on the bandwagon when they see, numbers go up only season. Yeah, I think that again, all these things like GTA 6 coming out, all these little things that it's going to help sort of solidify and densify the sort of like permanence of this sort of new way to transact and sort of like handle tokenized assets, whether it be in financial transaction form or in a type of proof system of certificates or art assets and stuff like that. So it's exciting times, and I'm excited to help build into that for music, and we'll see what happens.
Okay. So I think that's a cool ending point for today's interview. Yeah, I like that, Brayden.
Cool.
So yeah, guys, thanks for staying us here. I hope you like the discussion that we've been into. So again, just to remind you, we've had Brayden Pierce, CEO of Soundromeda, as our guest today, and big thanks, Brayden, for joining here. I think that went great.
Guys.
That went great.
Thank you guys very much. Check us out at soundromeda.com and sign up for early access.
Yeah, all the links will be in the description box below, so you can check it out. Anyways, take care and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.